From ancient stone circles, mysterious in their purpose, to their disciplined legions of Roman invaders marching across the landscape. From the rise and fall of a global empire that once painted a quarter of the world map red, to the complex and often turbulent currents of modern politics. Today, we embark on a grand journey through the fascinating story of the United Kingdom. This is a tale of a nation shaped by millennia of conflict, innovation, and constant transformation. Our primary goal in this historical exploration is to understand the forces that have molded the United Kingdom into its present form. We will seek to answer fundamental questions about its past. How did a small island nation rise to become a dominant global power? The story of the United Kingdom begins not with kings or castles, but in the immense unwritten expanse of deep time. Our narrative starts long before Britain was even an island, when it was a peninsula of the great European landmass, connected by a territory we now call Doggerland. It was across this ancient bridge that the very first humans arrived, around 800,000 years ago. Evidence of their presence, discovered in places like Happisburgh in Norfolk and Boxgrove in West Sussex, consists of primitive stone tools and fossilized remains. A profound transformation began to sweep across Britain around 4000 BCE, marking the dawn of the Neolithic period or New Stone Age. Communities began to clear forests, cultivate crops like wheat and barley, and domesticate animals such as cattle, sheep, and pigs. The most famous of all these structures is, of course, Stonehenge. The largest sarsens, weighing up to 30 tons, were dragged from the Marlborough Downs over 20 miles away. Its precise alignment with the movements of the sun suggests it was a sophisticated solar calendar or a temple of immense religious importance. The next great technological leap arrived in Britain around 2500 BCE with the introduction of metalworking, heralding the beginning of the Bronze Age. It was used to create superior tools for farming and construction, but more significantly, it was used to craft powerful, new weapons like swords and axes, as well as beautiful ornaments and jewellery. By the time the Romans set their sights on the island, Iron Age Britain was home to a sophisticated and vibrant society. These Celtic tribes were skilled farmers, fierce warriors and talented artisans, producing intricate metalwork and pottery decorated with swirling, abstract patterns known as Latenna art. They had a complex religious system overseen by a priest class known as the Druids, who acted as judges, teachers and spiritual leaders. Julius Caesar had made two brief expeditions in 55 and 54 BCE, but these were more reconnaissance missions than full-scale invasions, and he soon withdrew. However, the ambition of the Roman Empire was vast, and in 43 CE, Emperor Claudius decided the time was right for a proper conquest. He dispatched a formidable force of around 40,000 professional soldiers who landed on the shores of Kent. The Roman legions, with their superior discipline, tactics and equipment, were a force unlike anything the British tribes had ever faced. The most famous uprising occurred in 60 or 61 CE, led by Boudicca, queen of the Iceni tribe in the east of England. Built in the 1220s CE, Hadrian's Wall stretched 73 miles from coast to coast, a formidable barrier of stone and turf, punctuated by forts, mile castles and turrets. For nearly 400 years, Britain was part of the Roman Empire, a period that profoundly reshaped its society, culture and physical landscape. These new urban centres like Eboracum, now York, Diva Victrix, which became Chester, and Aquisulis, known today as Bath, became hubs of Roman life, complete with forums, basilicas, public baths and amphitheatres. They built luxurious villas in the countryside, decorated with intricate mosaics and equipped with underfloor heating. In 410 CE, the Romano-British leaders, facing increased raids from Picts, Scots and Saxons, appealed to Emperor Honorius for help. His reply was stark: they must look to their own defences. This marked the effective end of Roman rule. With the departure of the Roman legions in 410 CE, Britain was left in a precarious and vulnerable state. It was into this power vacuum that new groups of people began to arrive from across the North Sea. These peoples, whom we collectively call the Anglo-Saxons, came from the regions of modern-day Germany, Denmark and the Netherlands. By the 7th century, the political map of the island had been completely redrawn. The land was dominated by several major Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, often referred to as the Heptarchy. A profoundly transformative force arrived in this patchwork of pagan kingdoms at the end of the 6th century: Christianity. In 597 CE, a mission sent from Rome by Pope Gregory the Great, led by a monk named Augustine, arrived in the Kingdom of Kent. Just as the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were achieving a degree of stability and cultural sophistication, a new and terrifying threat appeared on the horizon. In 793 CE, a wave of shock and horror spread across the Kingdom of Northumbria. Raiders in longships had sailed from Scandinavia and launched a brutal attack on the wealthy and undefended monastery of Lindisfarne, a sacred centre of Christian learning. In 865, a huge force, known in the chronicles as the Great Heathen Army, landed in East Anglia. This was not a raiding party, it was an army of conquest. The Vikings began to settle permanently in the lands they had conquered, creating a territory that became known as the Danelaw. This vast area covering the north and east of England was now under Viking control and subject to their laws and customs. In the dark days of the 870s, with the Great Heathen Army seemingly unstoppable, the fate of the last English kingdom rested on the shoulders of one man, Alfred, the King of Wessex. He rallied his forces and in 878 CE achieved a stunning and decisive victory against the Viking leader Guthrum at the Battle of Edington. But Alfred's vision extended far beyond mere survival. He was not just a warrior, he was a scholar and a reformer who understood that military strength alone was not enough to secure his kingdom's future. It was Aethelstan who, in 927 CE, finally became the first king to rule over a unified England. The vision of Alfred the Great, the only English monarch ever to be called the Great, had become a reality, giving birth to the political entity that we still recognize today. The year 1066 stands as one of the most pivotal dates in all of English history, a year of crisis and conquest that would irrevocably change the nation's destiny. This created a dangerous power vacuum, and three powerful men immediately laid claim to the English crown. King Harold of England, demonstrating incredible speed and military prowess, marched his army northwards and met the invaders at Stamford Bridge near York. Just 3 days after the battle at Stamford Bridge, while his troops were still recovering in the north, Harold received devastating news. William of Normandy had finally landed his invasion force on the south coast of England at Pevensey Bay. On October 14, 1066, the English and Norman armies clashed on a hillside near the town of Hastings. According to the Bayeux Tapestry, the famous embroidered cloth that chronicles these events, King Harold was struck in the eye by a stray arrow and then cut down by Norman knights. William the Conqueror's victory at Hastings did not mean the immediate pacification of England. His response was ruthless and devastating. In what became known as the Harrying of the North from 1069 to 1070, his armies systematically destroyed crops, burned villages, and slaughtered livestock and people. To secure their new territories and intimidate the local populace, these new lords began a massive program of castle building. The iconic Motte and Bailey Castle, a wooden or stone keep on an earthen mound, became a common sight across the landscape. In 1085, William commissioned one of the most remarkable administrative accomplishments of the entire medieval period, a comprehensive survey of his new kingdom. Known as the Domesday Book, this detailed inventory recorded, county by county, who owned what land, what resources it contained, from ploughs and mills to livestock and people, and what taxes it owed before and after the conquest. The centuries following the Norman conquest were dominated by the power of the monarchy and the continuing development of the feudal state. Magnificent cathedrals and abbeys built in the soaring Gothic style rose across the country, such as those at Canterbury, Lincoln and Salisbury, monuments to the wealth and power of both the church and the crown. King John, who ruled from 1199 to 1216, was a particularly unpopular king, known for his military failures in France and for imposing heavy arbitrary taxes on his barons to fund his wars. By 1215, the leading nobles had had enough. They rebelled and forced King John to meet them at a meadow called Runnymede beside the River Thames. There they compelled him to agree to a list of demands for reform, a document that would become known as the Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. It established the fundamental idea that a ruler's power should have legal limits and laid the groundwork for the future development of Parliament and constitutional law. The long and bloody series of civil wars, known as the Wars of the Roses, finally came to an end in 1485 on the battlefield at Bosworth Field. Henry Tudor was crowned King Henry VII, establishing the new and powerful Tudor dynasty that would rule England for over a century. Henry VII's son, Henry VIII, is perhaps the most famous or infamous of all English monarchs. When the Pope refused to grant him an annulment from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, who had failed to produce a son, Henry took a radical and unprecedented step. To cement his power and fill his depleted treasury, Henry ordered the dissolution of the monasteries. This saw the closure and destruction of hundreds of wealthy and powerful religious houses across the country. The reign of Queen Elizabeth I from 1558 to 1603 is often remembered as a golden age in English history. A skilled and intelligent politician, Elizabeth navigated these dangers with remarkable success. In 1588, Philip launched his Invincible Armada, a massive fleet of warships sent to invade England, overthrow Elizabeth, and restore Catholicism. The smaller, more agile English ships, combined with effective tactics and a powerful storm that became known as the Protestant Wind, managed to scatter and defeat the supposedly invincible fleet. The defeat of the Spanish Armada was a triumphant moment for England and a massive boost to national morale. It secured the country's independence, confirmed its Protestant identity, and announced England's arrival as a major naval power on the European stage. The arrival of the Stuart dynasty in 1603 with King James I marked the beginning of a new century of conflict and constitutional crisis. Charles I's relationship with Parliament deteriorated rapidly. He clashed with them repeatedly over finances and religious policy, and when they refused to grant him the funds he wanted, he resorted to ruling without them for 11 years. In 1642, the breaking point was reached, and the English Civil War began. The country split into two factions, the Royalists or Cavaliers, who supported the king, and the Parliamentarians or Roundheads. Parliament's forces, particularly their professional and highly disciplined new model army, led by the brilliant General Oliver Cromwell, gradually gained the upper hand. In January 1649, Charles I was found guilty and executed. The first time a reigning monarch had been publicly tried and beheaded by his own people. In 1660, by overwhelming public demand, the monarchy was restored, and the executed king's son was invited back from exile to rule as King Charles II. The Stuart dynasty ended with the death of Queen Anne in 1714, and as she had no surviving children, the crown passed to her nearest Protestant relative, George, the Elector of Hanover in Germany. This marked the beginning of the Georgian era, a period that would see Britain transform into a dominant global power. Conflicts like the 7 Years' War, fought across Europe, North America and India, resulted in significant territorial gains for Britain. The attempt to impose taxes on its American colonies to pay for their defense led to the American War of Independence. By 1783, Britain was forced to recognize the independence of the United States. This era was also characterized by a great cultural and intellectual flowering known as the Enlightenment. London became a bustling, cosmopolitan hub of coffee-house debates, scientific societies and artistic patronage. The agricultural revolution saw new farming techniques and enclosure acts transform the rural landscape, increasing food production, but also displacing many people from the countryside. Beginning in the latter half of the 18th century, a series of technological breakthroughs in Britain kick-started the Industrial Revolution, a period of change so profound it has been compared to the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic era. The true catalyst for industrialization on a mass scale was the perfection of the steam engine by inventors like James Watt. New industrial towns and cities like Manchester, Leeds and Birmingham grew at an explosive rate as people flocked from the countryside to work in the new factories and mills. This rapid, unplanned urbanization led to overcrowded and unsanitary living conditions for the new industrial working class. It spurred the development of new transportation networks, first with a web of canals and later with the revolutionary railway system, which shrank distances and connected the nation as never before. The long reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901 marked the pinnacle of British power and influence on the global stage. The British Empire, on which it was famously said the sun never set, expanded to its greatest extent, covering nearly a quarter of the Earth's land surface and ruling over a fifth of its population. The Great Exhibition of 1851, held in the magnificent Crystal Palace in London, perfectly encapsulated the spirit of the age. Thinkers like Charles Darwin, with his theory of evolution by natural selection, fundamentally challenged long-held religious and scientific beliefs, forever changing humanity's understanding of its place in the natural world. Beneath the veneer of imperial grandeur and industrial might, Victorian Britain was grappling with the profound social consequences of its rapid transformation. This period saw the beginning of significant social and political reform, driven by reformers, philanthropists, and political movements. The confidence and stability of the Victorian and Edwardian eras were shattered in the summer of 1914 with the outbreak of the First World War. The war quickly bogged down into the brutal, attritional stalemate of trench warfare on the Western Front. Battles like the Somme and Passchendaele resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties for gains of only a few miles of muddy, shell-torn ground. When the war finally ended in November 1918, Britain and its allies were victorious, but the cost was staggering. The country was left mourning a lost generation of nearly 1 million dead from Britain and its empire, with millions more wounded both physically and psychologically. The conflict had exhausted the British economy, leaving the nation deeply in debt to the United States and transforming it from a creditor to a debtor nation for the first time. By the 1930s, the world was once again sliding towards conflict, fueled by the global economic depression and the rise of aggressive, fascist regimes in Italy and Germany. The initial phase of the conflict went disastrously for the Allies, culminating in the fall of France in the summer of 1940, leaving Britain to stand alone against the might of Nazi-occupied Europe. Under the inspirational leadership of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the nation braced for invasion. The Royal Air Force fought and won the crucial Battle of Britain in the skies over southern England, preventing a German invasion and demonstrating Churchill's famous promise that they would never surrender. Britain became a crucial base for the eventual liberation of Europe, culminating in the D-Day landings in Normandy in June 1944. Financially and militarily unable to maintain its vast empire, Britain began a process of decolonization. The most significant moment was the granting of independence to India and Pakistan in 1947, which heralded the end of the British Empire. The landmark creation of the welfare state by the post-war Labour government, particularly the National Health Service in 1948, fundamentally reshaped the relationship between the state and its citizens. This period also saw a wave of immigration from Commonwealth countries invited to help rebuild the nation and staff its new public services, beginning the transformation of Britain into a multicultural society. The Suez Crisis of 1956, where Britain, France, and Israel were forced to withdraw from Egypt under pressure from the United States, was a humiliating episode that starkly demonstrated the end of Britain's status as an independent global superpower. After several previous attempts were vetoed by France, the United Kingdom finally joined the European Economic Community, the forerunner to the European Union, in 1973. The late 1970s and 1980s brought another radical shift with the rise of Conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Her government pursued a policy of free market economics, privatization of state-owned industries, and curbing the power of the trade unions. As the United Kingdom entered the 21st century, it faced a new set of complex challenges that questioned its political structure and its place in the world. The creation of a Scottish Parliament and a Welsh Assembly in 1999 gave those nations greater control over their domestic affairs, but it also fueled calls for full independence. The Scottish National Party grew in influence, culminating in an independence referendum in 2014. While the vote was to remain part of the United Kingdom, the issue did not disappear. The defining political event of this period, however, was the 2016 referendum on the United Kingdom's membership of the European Union. The Leave campaign, tapping into concerns about sovereignty, immigration, and a sense of detachment from the political establishment, narrowly won the vote by 52% to 48%. The United Kingdom officially left the European Union in January 2020, embarking on a new and uncertain path outside the trading bloc that had defined its foreign and economic policy for a generation. Our long journey through the annals of time has brought us from the first human footprints on a misty prehistoric landmass to the complex, interconnected and often contentious United Kingdom of the 21st century. We have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the clash of cultures and the birth of ideas that have reshaped not only this small group of islands but the entire world. The influence of its language, its laws and its political ideas can be seen across the globe, a lasting legacy of its imperial past. As the nation continues to navigate the challenges of the modern world, from the future of the Union itself to its place on the global stage, its long and fascinating history remains the essential key to understanding the forces that have shaped it, and those that will continue to define its future journey. The story of the United Kingdom, which began with prehistoric settlers on a remote island, has been one of constant change, conflict, and adaptation. As it navigates the complexities of the 21st century, its long and turbulent history serves as a reminder of its capacity for reinvention in the face of new challenges.